Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope this video finds you well wherever you are in the world. So today, if you don't mind, I would very much love to share with you some thoughts that I have with respect to a recent release made by the Criterion collection during this year of 2020. Now we are at spine number 1018 for a film that was released in 1990 from filmmaker Jenni Livingston. The film is Paris is Burning. This film from 1990, Paris is Burning, by Jenni Livingston, is a kind of wondrous, effervescent documentary. It's a cinematic document that is filled with so much wit and life and vitality that it is such a wondrous thing to watch. Now, it is a documentary that is depicting a particular time and place, and it's depicting New York City in the mid to late 80s. And specifically, it is depicting a particular aspect of the LGBTQ community during this time and in this place, namely the what is now referred to as the sort of Harlem ball scene, where we had a lot of people who would gather in these organized events called balls, and there would be these sort of competitions among participants, which involved certain categories that allowed people to dance and to express themselves and to wear certain pieces of fashion in order to participate in a particular category and the like. And these balls became a kind of cornerstone of the, I don't want to call it nightlife because it's so much more, and the film shows us how important and how fundamentally, profoundly important the balls were, and this ball scene. This became, for many people, a sort of underground cultural event. It became the staple for this community during this time, and it became for many people in this community, at least as depicted in this film or described in this film, a kind of way to express one's identity and to feel safe and to feel like one could show off one's own energy and one's own individuality in a space that was created by these events, these ball events. And one could express oneself in a way that one could feel protected, because after all, this was the mid to late 80s, and there are and there were, of course, many challenges, so many challenges in terms of the sort of external challenges that the LGBTQ community faced and faces with respect to aspects of discrimination and the AIDS crisis and other kinds of discrimination, of course, also based on racial discrimination, as we see from specific stories that are presented by specific participants of this film, people who were actually interviewed and who are shown being interviewed in this film, as the film follows this community as a whole, but also follows certain people as they are involved in this community. So in many ways, this film serves as a kind of direct glimpse into this fascinating world, but it also serves as a broader sort of statement, if you will, as to how people in the LGBTQ community were essentially using the balls not only as a means of individual freedom, and not only as a means of expressing themselves in ways that perhaps they weren't necessarily expressing themselves in other venues, but also it serves as a kind of reminder of the times and the challenges that many people in this community were facing at this time. So this serves as not only a sort of historical cinematic document of a time that, according to many people, once was but no longer is, but it also serves as a kind of general statement with respect to the vital importance of feeling accepted, feeling protected, and also feeling like one is able to express oneself and to make statements about one's own identity in a way that is fun, energetic, and funny, and witty, and vital, and very much full of energy and life. So that seems to me to be the essence of the sort of the ball scene that is depicted or described in the documentary Paris is Burning. But there are many grand statements that this film, I believe, is trying to make, quite nobly, I would suggest. And above it all, or I should say, or along the way, this film still maintains a sense of a kind of funny tone. There are so many glimpses of personality, the wonderful, charming, very charismatic personalities of many of the film's participants. We see their ideas, which might seem on the surface to be trivial and mundane in terms of the kind of ball scene intrigue, as it were, between certain rival participants, etc. It's fascinating stuff. But also, and I would suggest this as well, I mean, even what might seem to be sort of the mundane kinds of comments still provide such great intimate portraits as to what the people being interviewed, what their thoughts are, and what their views are, and what their hopes and dreams are. And this, therefore, provides us, the viewers, with a wonderfully close and intimate look into the way that the interviewees are viewing the world. And oftentimes, there are so many moments of profound, sagely wisdom in terms of a philosophy or outlook on life that it is really quite something to behold and to listen to. And so there is, I would suggest, such a wide range of what this film has to offer. It is a direct kind of documentary which is about this particular aspect of LGBTQ community in New York during this time, namely focusing in on the drag ball scene, but it uses that setting as a means of exploring the lives and hopes and dreams and struggles that are related to the particular people that we are so fortunate to meet along the way as we watch this film. So this becomes a very lively, potent, and at times quite powerful and moving cinematic document of this time and place, New York in the mid to late 1980s, and this kind of energy that was present during that time. It's captured forever on cinema within the frames and the reels of this film, Paris is Burning, and now presented to us in this edition released by the Criterion Collection. This is Paris is Burning. So speaking of Paris is Burning and the Criterion Collection, let me just describe briefly what this edition has to offer, and there is quite a bit to talk about. So first, there is the film itself, and this is purported to be a new 2K digital restoration supervised by the director Livingston herself, and the film looks really, really beautiful. It looks very colorful, and the picture quality is effervescent, so strongly recommended. And the sound is also really wonderful. One of the things that's very important about this film is also the sound and the soundtrack, and so it's very crisp, and it's very easy to listen to on this Criterion release, at least as far as my ears can tell. So really great stuff. Then, if we go to the supplements themselves, first we have a Criterion-produced conversation that was filmed in November 2019. And this has Thomas Allen Harris, who is a filmmaker, speaking to Jennie Livingston, and also Freddie Pendavis, and Saul Pendavis, who's sometimes also referred to as Saul Williams Pendavis. But the participants who are related to the film, Jennie Livingston, of course, and Freddie Pendavis, who appears in the film, and also Saul Pendavis, who also appears in the film. So Freddie Pendavis is the young man who is seen often interviewed. As an example, he gives very memorable comments about what mopping means, and Roy Rogers. And also Saul Pendavis is the gentleman that's featured in the film, and he's wearing the military uniform, and he's talking about the ball culture, and also how people in uniform are looked upon within the culture. It's very fascinating stuff. Well, we see, and then of course Jennie Livingston is the filmmaker. Well, now we see in 2019 these three people who are direct participants of this film in the same room talking with Thomas Allen Harris, and it is fascinating stuff. It is really fascinating stuff. For example, Saul Pendavis' story is so it's so fascinating, and so to get Saul Pendavis' story through this conversation is really great to have. Also, we get, of course, Freddie Pendavis' comments. He's talking about, for example, Kim Pendavis, and also talking about the impact of the film Paris is Burning and other aspects like that. And then Jennie Livingston, of course. Jennie Livingston in this conversation talks about her struggles with trying to get the film off the ground, what her initial inspirations of the film were, etc. And it's just a fantastic conversation, and there are moments where the the characters, the characteristics of these people, their kind of souls, if you will. They really come alive, and there are just bursts of energy within this conversation alone that are just so witty and funny and alive. It's just a real pleasure to listen to these people sit down and talk about this film and about their lives now and about other similar things. So this is the conversation among Freddie Pendavis, Saul Pendavis, and Jennie Livingston, and Thomas Allen Harris. Next is the what's known as the outtakes of the film. Now, this was a film, Paris is Burning, that was a documentary that is 76 minutes according to the back of the Criterion box here. But this was edited down from hours and hours and hours of footage. So what happened to all that footage? Well, Criterion has very kindly, in connection with the efforts of the filmmakers, of course, made some of this outtake footage available to view. And this is very, very interesting. I should note that the total running time of the totality of these outtakes is approximately 1 hour and 50 minutes, 50. So 1 hour and 50 minutes. And the outtake section is divided up into easy to navigate chapters with their own titles. So you can go to the menu and you can look at the outtakes, and you can scroll down the chapter menu, and you can click, you can start from the beginning, or you can go directly to the chapter that you want and watch the outtakes. So it's very easy to maneuver, very easy to navigate. The outtakes themselves are in really great condition for what they are, right? Some of them are not, they're not perfect in terms of beautiful, pristine image quality or sound quality, but they are really, really good all the same. This is an important point because, as some of you may know, this film, Paris is Burning, has been made available through other labels and other releases in the past. In particular, 2005, there was a DVD that was released, not by Criterion, but it was released in 2005. And that DVD had, among other things, it had an outtakes section. And as far as I understand it, that outtakes section was about 50 minutes or so. And the quality, it was great to have, of course, but the quality was not necessarily the best type of picture quality, etc. Well, now we have the Criterion Collection, and we have not just 50 minutes, but 1 hour and 50 minutes, or give or take 1 hour and 50 minutes. So that is suggesting to me that the footage that we're getting in the Criterion release is, part of it is overlapping with footage that was already made available in the past, but perhaps a lot of it, and according to the back of the box, a good chunk of it is never before seen footage. So the Criterion box says, at the back of the box says, over an hour of never before seen outtakes. And so what I interpret that to mean is, as I said, some of the outtakes had been made available in the past, but that was probably only about 40 minutes or 50 minutes or so. Now what Criterion has done is they've made their own outtake section, which is totaling 1 hour and 50 minutes. So some of this footage you think is probably footage that has already been made available, but other footage has never been made available before. So that's what my understanding is. And it is very exciting stuff. The outtakes themselves, I think, are so important to watch because they really expand many of the stories by the interviewees that couldn't be discussed in the film itself. So you get extra stories or extra comments from Venus Xtravaganza, for example, or you get for Pepper LaBeija and other participants, and so and you get some people who don't get featured in the documentary itself, but who are featured in the outtakes, and it's wonderful to see this extended footage of these people who weren't necessarily featured prominently in the film. In other words, the outtakes serve as a kind of wonderful extension of the film itself to give us a further indication and sense of the lives and the livelihoods of these particular individuals. So I call it quite essential viewing. It's almost like you're getting a whole new film together with Paris is Burning, together with the Criterion chapters. And also there are credits at the end of this whole presentation, which are Criterion-made credits, which is suggestive of the fact that this is a sort of a Criterion-produced section in the sense of the presentation of these outtakes. It is certainly of great quality, certainly the best quality of these outtakes that I've ever seen outtakes. Plus we have what I assume to be a chunk of these outtakes which have never been made available until now. So this is a really great supplement to have, which are the outtakes from the film. Then I should mention that I referred to the 2005 DVD release of this film. Also on that 2005 DVD release, as far as I understand it, there was a commentary track, and the commentary track was with Jennie Livingston, and also with Willie Ninja, and also with Freddie Pendavis, and then also Jonathan Oppenheim, who's the editor. Now that commentary track has now been included as the commentary track which is made available on the Criterion release. So you're getting the 2005 commentary track, which itself is really illuminating. There are moments where the filmmakers, namely Livingston and Oppenheim, are talking about the filmmaking process, and it feels like they're not through the entire commentary, but once in a while it feels like they're reading off of some pre-prepared comments. But then for most of the rest of the commentary, there's a lot of impromptu conversation made on the spot among the participants, in particular Livingston and Willie Ninja and Freddie Pendavis. And to hear some of their comments throughout this commentary are just, some of the comments are so funny, so witty. They're the characters, their personalities come out so vividly, even in their comments in the commentary. It's really great. And there's, I should add too, that the commentary adds certain really interesting bits of almost important information concerning some of the background of the film. Granted, this film has a lot of history, and there are a lot of production and production-related stories about this film that have accumulated over the years. Now, I should say that the Criterion Collection release doesn't necessarily address all of these sorts of production history details that have accumulated over the years, but it does a pretty good job in addressing a lot of them, and the commentary in particular. And for example, there's a very quite shocking aspect with respect to one of the interviewee participants in the film, Dorian Corey. And after the film, unfortunately, Dorian Corey passed away. But then there were some very shocking details that emerged with respect to her death, or in relation to her death. And it's a very, I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's a very shocking and quite almost morbid aspect of this, that's related to this particular participant. And we hear Jennie Livingston ask Freddie Pendavis on the commentary track what Freddie Pendavis knew about, or what Freddie Pendavis heard about with respect to what happened to this particular story that was related to Dorian Corey. And it's so fascinating to hear what Freddie Pendavis has to say, and how Jennie Livingston reacted to this story, how Willie Ninja reacts, and what he thinks went on, etc. This is just an example of how the commentary, I think, is very, very helpful in at least addressing certain aspects of this film that might be deemed to be, I don't know if controversial is the right word, but might be deemed to be very sort of unavoidably maybe shocking and aspects of the production that are worth talking about to some degree anyway. And I should add that Freddie Pendavis's comments, even when talking about a quite morbid subject, he has such a sort of effervescent and lovely personality to him that it's just the way in which he expresses himself is just so. It's very almost beautiful in terms of how bright and how energetic he is. And there are moments where the people in the commentary are just laughing, and you can't help but feel something similar, even as they're recounting these stories. And it's I mean, I don't want to explain anything more about it. You please listen to the commentary. And if you know anything about Paris's Burning and Dorian Corey, and what happened after her death, I think you know what I'm talking about. So, but anyway, that is an example of, I think, how fascinating the commentary track is. So it's definitely worth listening to. Okay, but continuing on with the Criterion supplements, we have then another Criterion produced supplement, which is a 10-minute interview with filmmaker and film historian Jenni Olson. And here Jenni Olson is talking about the impact of Paris's Burning, the kind of importance it had to what Jenni Olson describes as queer cinema, and how this has this film has a certain prominence and importance in the context of not only queer cinema, but also documentary cinema, and also the so-called mainstream appeal of this film, and how this film really in many ways transformed the landscape of documentary cinema during the late 80s and early 90s. So it's a great conversation to have on the Criterion Collection with Jenni Olson. And then we have something that is quite peculiar with respect to the Criterion box. The Criterion back cover here, or has a list, of course, of all the supplements that are included, which is standard for any Criterion release. And you can find this list on the Criterion website as well for the description of this film. For whatever reason, though, the back of the Criterion box here does not mention a supplement that I found on the Criterion menu here. And that supplement was a 9-minute interview with Gisele Xtravaganza, and it's Gisele Xtravaganza's comments on Paris's Burning. Now, Gisele Xtravaganza is described as being the contemporary mother of the House Xtravaganza, and this interview is from 2019. So this is great because Gisele Xtravaganza provides a kind of contemporary take on this film, and it's a contemporary take taken from one of the houses themselves that are depicted in the film, namely the House Xtravaganza. So, and talking also about, in particular, Angie Xtravaganza, who also is featured somewhat prominently in the documentary Paris is Burning. So this is, it's curious that this is not described on the back of the Criterion box as far as I can tell, and it's, as of now anyway, it's not on the Criterion website. But please note that, at least as far as the Blu-ray that I have, there is another supplement which is called, it's called Gisele Xtravaganza on Paris is Burning, and this is an interview that, according to the Criterion collection, was to the Blu-ray menu description, that was made in 2019. So there's that. Then continuing on, the Criterion release also includes a Joan Rivers show episode, and this is from August 8, 1991. And this is Joan Rivers' show on Paris is Burning, where Joan Rivers has on some of the interviewee participants who are featured in the film. So we have, and also the filmmakers. So Jennie Livingston is featured in the show. Dorian Corey is featured in the show. Pepper LaBeija is featured in the show. Willie Ninja is also featured in the show. There are also appearances by Freddie, Pendavis, and it doesn't say on the back of the Criterion box here, but also Kim Pendavis makes an appearance during this Joan Rivers show episode. And also there is a little bit about voguing. In particular, they're showing what voguing is, and also there is a little sort of, at the end, there's a very interesting sort of mock ball that is taking place. And so to show people, to show the audience and to show the viewers what the balls were, what the ball scene entailed, and to show people what voguing meant and what other terms that are employed meant, that sort of thing. So it's a very interesting kind of historical document, if anything, about the contemporary reaction to the film in sort of mainstream television culture, as exemplified by the Joan Rivers show and Joan Rivers herself. To see Joan Rivers talk about this film and to interview some of these people is really, in and of itself, very, very interesting. You know, Joan Rivers has a very she has a certain type of personality, and it comes through very much so in this particular episode. And so, I mean, it's one of those very memorable television personalities, of course. And you can tell, though, that she has a very genuine interest and very genuine excitement about this film and about what this film represents and what it is about. And so you could, even though maybe some of her questions might not necessarily seem to be the most appropriately phrased, or there's a moment where she's talking to Freddie Pendavis, but she unknowingly mispronounces his name as Freddie Pendova, and you actually see Freddie Pendavis's reaction. He's like, you could tell he's probably reacting to how his name was mispronounced on daytime TV or something. And so, but you know, he also took it he took it well, apparently, because he was very energetic and very lively during the show. It's so there's a funny little thing too about how one of the participants, I forget who, it might have been Dorian Corey or Pepper LaBeija, was just talking about the balls, and they mentioned the phrase 24/7. And Joan Rivers is like, what does that mean, 24/7, 24/7? And they explain, well, 24/7 means 24 hours, 7 days a week or something. And she's, oh, wow, that's really fascinating. As though this was a phrase that Joan Rivers learned, that she understood to be part of the ball culture lingo. And I don't know the history, the sort of etymology history of the phrase 24/7, but if indeed the Joan Rivers show episode is any indication, and the phrase 24/7 in fact emerged from this ball scene, that's something that is new to me, and that's very fascinating in and of itself for me. So that's an interesting detail that I was really struck by, among many other aspects of this show that I was really, really struck by. once again, I was quite admiring Joan Rivers and her really earnest way of trying to express just how much she really loved this film, Paris is Burning. So a great example of how this film was sort of welcomed by mainstream entertainment outlets. So it's really good to have. So this is a Joan Rivers Show episode from August 8, 1991. Then we have the trailers. Now this is also very interesting because the Criterion box, and I believe the Criterion website as of now, describes it as being trailer in the singular, whereas in actual fact, the trailers that are included here are two. There are two trailers. There is the theatrical trailer to this, which is really good, but then there's also the what's termed the fundraising trailer, and the fundraising trailer is about 5 minutes, and this is featuring one of the scenes from one of the balls that you can end up seeing in the final film product, of course. But this was the fundraising trailer, which I understand was the trailer that, according to Jennie Livingston in her commentary and also in the 2019 conversation on the Criterion collection here, this is the fundraising trailer that she put together in order to show potential people in order to try to raise money for finishing and completing the film. So this is itself a really great historical document. There's also an interesting detail about how you can actually see it's in essence a depiction of one of the scenes in the film that you see in one of the balls, and there's a particular moment where you see Willie Ninja dancing, doing his really cool Vogue moves. But there's also a moment, and it's essentially identical to the scene that you see in the film, but there's some extra stuff in this fundraising trailer that you don't see in the final film product, which is some footage involving Willie Ninja's mother. And this is really fascinating stuff. You know, Willie Ninja's mother also appears in the Joan Rivers show as well, and we hear Willie Ninja talk about how important his mother was to him. And so to see this little glimpse of his mother in the fundraising trailer, which you don't get in the final film product, is again another fascinating thing. It's almost like it's its own little outtakes section, wherein we see an expansion of a discussion of the interviewee participants' individual lives. And so Willie Ninja is another example of that. Really, really important stuff to see. So that is it. And of course we have the booklet, which is right here. Speaking of Willie Ninja, we have here, I should mention one thing which I've neglected to do about the commentary. Speaking of Willie Ninja, you know, Willie Ninja was one of the participants in the 2005 commentary, and it's sort of a bittersweet as well, because we hear some of his comments about his career and what it was that he achieved, because he achieved so much. And he was able to talk about that to a certain degree in the 2005 commentary, but unfortunately he passed away in 2006. And so some of the comments that we hear from him are, especially considering what happened to him just a year after the commentary was recorded, are very poignant, very bittersweet, and quite emotional. So that is another reason why it is worthwhile to listen to the commentary track. But speaking of Willie Ninja, of course, the picture of him is adorning the front part of the booklet, which is really substantial and great. It's a stapled booklet, which I love. It has beautiful color pictures, and it has two essays. Oh, I'm sorry. And before that, it has this great little list of the houses, the prominent houses that are in one form or another featured in the film. And you have not only the house names, but you have the members, or some of the members of the houses, and the mothers as well, the house mothers, at least in the context of what is shown in the film. And so this is very, very helpful as well. It's a great sort of a document, a reference document to have. But then we have the two essays. One is called The Fire This Time by Michelle Parkerson, and another is To Be Real by Essex Hemphill. The second essay, To Be Real, was one that was originally published in 1991. So the second essay is in essence an essay that was published almost contemporarily at the same time with the release of the film, more or less. Whereas the first essay is a modern day 2019-2020 written piece, and they're both talking in essence about the social and political impact of this film. They're also talking about the way in which this film also is a human portrait, an intimate portrait into the lives of these particular individuals, and how vital, therefore, this film is. So, with that, my friends, that is the Criterion release of Paris is Burning, which is right here. And I should say that, I should say one other thing as a kind of way to close, of course. This release by Criterion is, I would say, filled with so many details. I would suggest that while it doesn't necessarily go into every single production history story about this film ever, it does go still into a lot of detail, and it focuses its attention on the social impact of this film, and also this film as a work of cinema talking about particular individuals at a certain point in time and in a certain place. And so that alone sort of cements it as a very important, fundamental example of American documentary during this time. But the Criterion release does so much more. It provides us with so much more background, and it gives us the outtakes. Even the menu, which is a running sort of edited visual montage that is playing while the menu screen is on, and you got the C in the corner there. That, to my eye, looks to be some more footage, outtakes footage, that itself is not necessarily included in the final body of the film. So even in the menu screen, you're getting some outtakes footage, which is fascinating. And speaking of which, look at this picture, of course, which is adorning the front cover. This is designed according to the credits by Eric Skillman, but this is a still, a photo that is a cover photo that is by Jennie Livingston, and this is in fact Venus Xtravaganza, and this is a photo that is similar to a section of the film where a number of black and white stills at the same event of Venus Xtravaganza were taken by filmmaker Jennie Livingston and shown in sort of a photo montage. So you can, but it's interesting that as far as I understand it, this particular photo was not included in that photo montage that was included in the final film. In other words, while the same series of photos was included in the film, this particular image, as far as I recall, was not itself included in the final film, which means that even the front cover of this is almost like a kind of outtake of the film that we're getting. So the Criterion release, in many facets, is providing us not only with the film, but also many outtakes and unseen bits of the film that Criterion is almost wanting to present us in whatever form it can, whether it's in an actual supplement section or in the menus or even in the cover art itself. And that is just brilliant. That is just brilliant. So bravo to Criterion for showing us the effort through this. This really fundamentally packed release for a film that is itself very filled with a lot of energy, a lot of life, and a lot of insight, and a lot of honesty, and a lot of how should I put it, effervescent, cinematic presence. It's all, of course, not all one side. It's, of course, a presentation that is suggestive of a life that is not always easy. It is suggestive of a kind of lifestyle in terms of this ball scene that has its own share of intrigue and drama. It's also a situation where certain tragedies can occur. So it has the potential of being a very sad, dark story. But this film, Paris is Burning, never lets go of the life, the wit, the humor, and the energy that is involved with all the individuals concerned. And that's, I think, an example of why the film is so wonderful as it is. And thank you, Criterion, for giving us such a well-rounded release of such an important and energetic film that is Paris is Burning. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now as far as my comments go for this really great film. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts about this? Please feel free to let me know in the comments section below. As always, I would love to hear what it is you have to say. So that's it for now, my friends. So thank you for your time. And until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. So until we meet again, thank you and cheers.